Hi, Founder fans. Jason here, and today's founder is Abraham Clark. Abraham Clark came from a farming family in New Jersey, though his parents didn't seem to think farming was for him. He had certain special talents that made him excel, and therefore his father apprenticed him to a surveyor. And as we've said before, being a surveyor was a great way to improve one's station in life and really excel. And Abraham Clark did this. Furthermore, while he was becoming a very good surveyor, he learned a lot of the law. Survey kind of went hand in hand with the law. Oftentimes, you'd be hired by the colonial assembly, or you'd be hired by landowners who needed to survey their land, who then would need to do some deed work, which was legal work. So Abraham Clark learned a lot about the law, and although he never actually became a lawyer, he ended up giving out a lot of legal advice, often for free, to people who could not necessarily afford to hire a real lawyer. Because of this, he kind of became a man of the people. And eventually, despite his middling start, he ended up getting elected to the New Jersey House of Representatives, or I should say the New Jersey Colonial Assembly. While he was here, he became an early advocate of independence, and the reason was he thought that independence would help common people even more than it would help the wealthy, though it most certainly would and did help the wealthy. Because of this, people continued to support Abraham Clark, and after the recommendation by Richard Henry Lee in the Continental Congress to declare independence went through, many of the colonies started recalling their people, the delegates they had at the Continental Congress, and sending people who were more in favor of independence. And especially New Jersey was noteworthy for this because almost all of New Jersey's delegates at the Second Continental Congress were against independence. So, seeing the writing on the wall, as I said, New Jersey recalled its delegates and sent new delegates, including Abraham Clark, who did arrive in Philadelphia in time to vote for independence and later became a signer of the Declaration of Independence. Now, Abraham Clark would serve off and on for the next dozen years or so in the Continental Congress and would go back to help in New Jersey also. Furthermore, during this time, he actually had a son. Well, several sons served in the Continental Army, but one was taken prisoner and kept in deplorable conditions on the prison ship Jersey off the coast of New York City. Now, Abraham Clark did not want to use his high station to help his sons in a way that other people could not help their children. But once news arrived that his kid was in the prison ship Jersey in a dungeon being fed food through bits of food through a keyhole in the dark, well, Abraham Clark did step in, and the rest of the Continental Congress contacted George Washington, who contacted the British and said, listen, if you're going to do this to Abraham Clark's kid, we're going to do it to some of your guys. And although Clark's son did remain in prison, he was treated much, much better from here on out. As I said, Abraham Clark did continue with the Continental Congress for the next decade or so, and then in 1786 he was one of the representatives who went to the Annapolis Convention in Maryland. And the Annapolis Convention was called together to try and come up with ways to fix issues that arose under the Articles of Confederation. Famously, they didn't fix anything, but what they did do is they called for another convention the following year, and that became the Constitutional Convention. Well, Clark, for his part, actually, according to James Madison, was the one at the convention in Annapolis who said, listen, let's call another better convention for next year. So if James Madison is to be believed, then the Constitutional Convention was actually Abraham Clark's idea. Now, Abraham Clark was elected to go to the Constitutional Convention, or as they called it at the time, the Philadelphia Convention, but unfortunately he fell very ill that summer and could not attend, and therefore actually missed the opportunity to have his name on both the Declaration and the Constitution, a very select group of people to sign both of those documents. Once the Constitution was completed, Abraham Clark didn't love it. He did like the idea of it, of course, but he didn't love it because he thought there were a lot of assumptions being made. As many anti-federalists would argue, a lot of assumptions about freedom were being made. He, though, would be much relieved, as many were, once the Bill of Rights was ratified a few years later. Now, Abraham Clark was not actually elected to the original United States House of Representatives. He missed the first session, but after that, he was elected to the second and third sessions of Congress, where he did play a role in helping establish many of the precedents that we still hold to this day. He did not seek re-election, and that's kind of a good thing because, unfortunately, he did pass away just a few weeks after he returned from his second stint in the United States Congress. So that's Abraham Clark. Let me know what you think about his life. I'd love to hear some comments about him or anyone else in New Jersey that you might want to learn more about. And if you think he should have been elected to that first House of Representatives, I certainly think he should have, but what are you going to do? Thank you so much for watching. I will be back tomorrow with our live trivia that we do every Friday. And if you're new here, make sure you subscribe because I put up videos about the American Revolution 5 days a week. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll be back with that trivia tomorrow.